Welcome back now to Good Day Columbia. As we've been talking all morning long, the monumental move made on Capitol Hill yesterday by the U.S. Supreme Court upholding the Affordable Care Act. And we've been talking with Ms. Jacqueline Fox, USC professor, law professor at USC, and Ben Homeyer this morning joining us to kind of dissect this decision and getting into the politic element of it. Obviously, this is a win for the Dems and a win for the Obama administration going forward. What could this mean, and how could this impact the November elections?
Well, I think this is going to greatly impact the elections. I mean, this was the signature moment that the president had pushed during his time in office so far. But this is also the signature item that Governor Romney has gone against. I think when you get the small business folks out that I deal with, they're going to be, I think, pushing harder now for Governor Romney, and you're going to get the folks on the other side, like the bishop who was here earlier, that are going to be pushing harder for the president now. Mm-hmm. So, you know, like every election, it's going to be who gets out and votes. But in my opinion, I think this is going to help help Governor Romney because 65% of Americans have said they are against the bill. So if those folks actually come out and vote, then this could be a win for the Republicans come November.
Jacqueline,
just going to ask, what's the difference? How much trouble is Romney going to have? And either one of you, I guess. He had his, Romney Care, for all intents and purposes, in Massachusetts, essentially the same thing. So how, I guess I'm not understanding how he's going to benefit from it, because he did the exact same thing on a state level.
You know, I have to say I'm going a little differently on this than you are. I don't think it's going to have much effect on the election at all. It's not going into effect, the stuff that's really going to touch people's lives till 2014. You have some kids who are on their parents' plans now and they're happy about it, and that may make them happy. You have some people who are very worried about it politically, but I think most of those people who are adamantly opposed to it honestly weren't going to be voting for President Obama anyway. I think independents at this point, their concerns don't seem to be that focused on this. And while people are very hyped up on the rhetoric, the actual effect of the law is almost nil in people's lives right now. And they're going to be looking at what are their family income looking like? What do they think about national security? Do they feel like their housing prices are coming out from underwater? So I really don't think, much as I love health law and policy, I don't think it's a driver of this kind of stuff. Not to the level I'd like to see it be, certainly.
Do you think this is, there's been people saying like this meddles too much in the lives of individuals and this should be handled at a state level versus the government coming in and mandating health care? What's your reaction to that statement?
Well, states, obviously, under our constitutional setup, right, states can mandate a lot. And so to say the federal government shouldn't be telling me what to do, it's not that the states won't tell you what to do. I mean, they have the power to do that, so there's a certain incoherency to that argument to me, that there's some difference in your actual day-to-day life if your state tells you what to do versus your federal government telling you what to do. So that kind of, I'm not sure what to do with that sort of argument. I think they're thinking more the federal government does it or nobody does. To me, the problem with health care right now is systemic, and it's across the country. And so you've got problems, and I think the Republicans would agree, if you keep it locked into one state or one town in terms of what kind of insurance you get or what you can do in the marketplace, you're not accurately looking at the scope of the problem, where companies are, where they're located in many different states and things like that. And to me, at least, it calls for national responses so that we can capture the full breadth of the problem in an organized way.
Jackie, you talked a minute ago about families being concerned about their income and things like that, but Ben, you had mentioned earlier that it is going to have an impact on the family's income because they're going to be taxed at a different rate, and there are some teeth in there if they choose to opt out of the health care.
Well, absolutely. There are penalties that we know that are associated with this. I mean, should you choose not to get coverage, you're actually going to be penalized for doing so. And if you are a company, and you have one person, as I said earlier, that qualifies on the federal level, if you don't offer health care to everybody there, then you're going to be paying a penalty as well. And there's a complex formula that does that. But I mean, you could be looking at $40,000, $50,000 in penalties. Of course, in the long run, that may be cheaper than what you'd have to pay for the actual health care. So some companies could actually opt to pay a penalty versus...
Because it may be cheaper for them in the long run, sure enough.
Yes.
Okay.
And you talked about the businesses you work with. A lot of people are saying that, we're looking at a huge hit on jobs in terms of small businesses, and that this could deter people from growing their business. Do you think we'll see that impact? from this law?
I mean, I tend to think that the healthier people are, the easier it's going to be for them to work effectively. I think a significant drain on small businesses is illness of employees who don't have access to health care. Is that right? I mean, doesn't that...
Well, you know, the way I look at it is if you're a small business and you're looking to grow and you need as much capital as possible to grow, which right now is still extremely hard for them to get. If you've got 49 employees, you're not going to add 1, 2, 3, however many employees, because it may put you over a threshold where you know then you have to factor in X amount of dollars for healthcare, for if you have to pay penalties, if you have to do whatever. And if you're at 60 employees and you need to cut a whole bunch, you're going to cut all those employees and get below that mandate where you know you now have to pay for X amount of health care. So I mean, we see it as a place where business is not going to grow.
I have a question, because you deal with people
Sure.
in this. So for small business owners, don't they want to have employees with good health care?
You want to have healthy employees, absolutely. And small business and business in general tries to do the right thing by their employees, but you don't want to be forced into a position. And I think that's our, and we want great healthcare. I mean, you know, I would love to be able to go, as I said to you earlier, I'd love to be able to go to Tennessee and buy my healthcare because they may offer a plan there that's different. I would love taxes across the spectrum to be the same if you have one employee, if you have 1,000 employees. And you know, I think now we have a real opportunity to have different healthcare laws put in place that would benefit everyone that right now don't happen. I mean, we need to have that discussion.
Because, I mean, one thing I was looking at this, and when we were first talking about what this law was going to look like, what the policy would look like, when you were saying there's a penalty if you reach a certain point, to me I was thinking, wow, if I had a small business and I knew I could pay X number of dollars per employee, right, and they would go on the exchanges and they would have health care, that's a load off my mind. I don't have to think about organizing it, signing those contracts, arguing with them about employee benefits. So I was looking at it as simple.
We don't know what all the costs are going to be yet. We can see premiums going up. We can see the actual cost of it rising. And a lot of that, obviously we need education on that. But, you know, for us, again, it comes back to being forced into a position.
And no one likes to be told what to do.
Yeah, and there's a question for you, I guess, from a legal standpoint. Isn't it semantics where the justices ruled 9-0 that it can't be forced, you can't be forced to take it, but yet they can call it a tax code and say you're going to be penalized if you don't. Isn't that like a consensual search with police that say, you know, can I search your car? If you don't, I'm going to get a warrant anyway? I mean, it doesn't matter. You're really being held over a barrel to get the health care. Isn't that the case, or is that not semantics?
Well, the tax code pushes everybody around, and it's been used as a tool of public health ever since we've had taxes. So yes, and yeah, you know, I mean, you have a power to push people financially, and generally we look at that as less intrusive than throwing them in jail, right? And it is, but it's a push. Yeah.
Is that to keep that slippery slope? Is that why you use a tax code to force it rather than mandating it by law? And is that kind of, otherwise that could be a slippery slope if all of a sudden the government started saying, here's the rules you're now going to follow?
I think the reason we have the mandate, it goes back to actuarial principles. I know that's like a killjoy to use that word. But the idea is if you're going to do away with pre-existing conditions, right, you're going to create a community pool of people. You're going to need everybody to have to buy insurance because your financial incentive is to buy insurance only when you get sick.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? If there's it would be illogical to buy it earlier. So the idea behind the mandate was we need to get everybody in the pool. So that was the push. The money is because we have EMTALA, right? Because we have this where you go to an emergency room and you get this guaranteed access to care, and we have that cost shifting problem. Theoretically, if you choose not to get insurance and you pay this penalty, it's meant to cover the actual costs we guess you represent a risk of generating. So you're 25 years old and you have your motorcycle and you're happy and you've never been sick a day in your life. Hopefully nothing bad's going to happen, but on that rainy night if you crash, okay, we've got this covered. It's not fun for anybody to talk about having to pay this stuff. And I think that when you talk about no one wanting to be told what to do and wanting to make their own financial decisions, I think even on a family level that happens, and that needs to be recognized, right? Anyone with kids forgoes things for themselves because they want their kids to have things. This is
Well, but
not
see, now the
easy.
feds are telling us, though, that we have to do this, and you know, we lose a basic freedom, in my opinion, in that, you know, what's the feds also going to do next? You know, and that's always a worry. Is now, you know, for the longest time, what you did with your money was roughly your business. Well, that's no longer the case anymore, and the feds have said a portion of your money, you know, again, is